What would it feel like to be truly, deeply happy, regardless of your circumstances? Did you know that happiness is a choice and not a result? That you can create your life on purpose? Join us now to learn more. This is Time to Rise and Thrive. And here's your host, Jackie Mott.
Hello and welcome. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott, and today is Remembrance Day. So when I was preparing for today's show, we do this thing where we sort of schedule things out, usually at least a few weeks in advance. And for this one, I thought, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? So this thing happens on Remembrance Day, right? And it's important that we do this, like no question about this. We have this time where we think back, we remember the sacrifices that people have made. We remember, the things that have happened that have brought us to this time in the world, in history, in our lives. But, one of the things that we sometimes forget about is the sacrifices that we've made, the acknowledgement of the things that we have done, the choices that we have made for ourselves that have led us to this place. So while we are thinking about this, like, how blessed are we to live at this time in history, to live, at least for me and most of the people I know, in countries where war is not really a thing, where we live in relative safety, where we have more resources available to us than have ever been possible on this planet throughout all of history. How blessed are we to be in that space? Let's also take a few moments to acknowledge you. Let's also take a few moments to think about what you have done to bring yourself to this place in your life. That's what I want to do today. So yes, let's please acknowledge our veterans and all of the things that have happened. And let's also take a moment to celebrate you. So what do we do on Time to Rise and Thrive? Every Friday afternoon, I am here with you, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we always talk about things like subliminal soundtrack. We talk about acknowledging your unique beauty, your value, the contribution that you are to the world. And this is one of the most beautiful spaces of my week. I absolutely love being with you because I am also conscious, leading up to the show time, while I'm with you, and then even after. I also have that consciousness of, wow, this is pretty great. This is pretty great that we get to come together and talk about these things, right? Yes. So that's what we do every Friday. So if you're somebody who's looking for maybe a little bit more positive energy or a little bit more understanding of who you are and what makes you unique and special and beautiful and amazing, this is a great place to be. I'm just going to say it. This is a great place to be. Friday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern. We are here every single week. And if you missed the show for some reason, you can find all of the recorded episodes. We're now at over 100. Crazy. All of the recordings are also available on all of the on-demand channels. So wherever you listen to your podcast, we're on Spreaker, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, iPod, something. I don't know. We're all over the place. Amazon. I just saw myself on Amazon the other day. Isn't that crazy? Really crazy. Yes. So before we get too far into this, I want to explain to you what I mean when I'm talking about subliminal soundtrack. So subliminal soundtrack is this loop of messages that plays in the back of our minds all day, every day. It's made up of all of these bits of information that we've picked up throughout the course of our lives. So every conversation you've had, every lesson you've learned, every relationship you've shared, every single experience has given you little bits of information that you've gathered together and you've stored them back there on that subliminal soundtrack. We use that information to create our belief systems about everything. So what does it mean to love or be loved? What does it mean to have money or not have money? What does it mean to be successful? And that's the one that we're going to be focusing on today. What does it mean to be successful? Okay. So when we create these belief systems, it's very important for us to understand two important things about the subliminal soundtrack. The first thing is that what we believe to be true will be true for us, even if it's based on completely incorrect information. I know it's a thing. The second thing is that we create our circumstances to support the belief systems that we carry. So when you find yourself, you're working toward a goal, or you'd really like to have a certain thing, and this could be anything. It could be a home, it could be a job, it could be a friend group or a relationship or anything. Okay. We'd really like to have this thing, but we're getting stuck. We're getting hung up somewhere and we can't quite figure out what that is. It's probably not your fault. Mhm. It's probably not your fault, because if we have belief systems that tell us that certain things are bad or evil or whatever they may be, then we will unconsciously, subconsciously, we will block ourselves from those things, or we will sabotage those things so they can't ever come into our world. So if you believe, for example, one of the really easy ways to show this is money is the root of all evil. We've all heard this, right? The truth is that that is actually a misquote. It's a misquote. The quote is actually, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay. And it's biblical, and I have the reference. I just don't have it in front of me right now. But the point of the matter is, if you have bought into that idea that money is the root of all evil rather than the love of money, which really is greed, if you've bought into this idea that money is evil, then you may be unconsciously or subconsciously sabotaging your ability to create wealth or abundance in your finances, because you have the idea that money is evil. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you have negative messaging around love, we've all heard the songs and the stories. Love hurts. We've seen the movies, right? Love hurts. If you have that and you've really bought into it, then you will subconsciously keep love away so that you won't get hurt. So that's what I'm saying. We create the circumstances to support the belief systems that we carry. So when we find ourselves stuck or trying to figure out what is going wrong, like, I'm doing everything they told me to do, what am I doing wrong? It may not be that you're doing anything wrong. Maybe the stuff going on back there. So it's really important for us to get clarity on what that stuff is, where it's holding us back, and where it's supporting us already, so that we can break through the ones that are holding us back and create more supportive messages that will actually help us get to the places that we'd like to be in our lives. So how does this all relate to this idea of let's honor ourselves? How far have you come? So Remembrance Day, let's remember where we came from. How far have you come? That's what we're talking about today. And there's a bit of a theme. I just realized it this morning. I don't know what's going on with November, because last week we talked about celebrating you. And what that became was this acknowledgement of who you really are. Who you are. What difference do you make in this world? So there's this theme, right? We're acknowledging who we are, what makes us unique and special. Now we're acknowledging how far have we come on today's show. And in a couple of weeks, we're doing another one that is all about acknowledging your progress this year. So I guess there's some sort of a theme about acknowledgement in November. Who knew? I didn't understand that, but it's pretty awesome, right? So let's just sort of get into this. Where does this come from? This idea that we don't stop long enough. And that's one of the biggest problems. We don't stop long enough to really celebrate, right? This is one of the things that happens. And I really hear this from entrepreneurial people. We set a goal, we move toward that goal, we hit the goal, we might take time to stop and smell the roses or enjoy that for a moment, or maybe buy ourselves something to celebrate or go out for dinner, whatever, right? We might take a moment to stop and acknowledging that thing, right? And then what do? What's the next goal? What's the next goal? So when that happens, I want you to really sort of be with me in this moment, okay? When we don't take the time to really celebrate our progress, acknowledge our success, acknowledge ourselves for what we have had to do, like the cost, the sacrifices, whatever it is that allowed you to make that progress. When we don't acknowledge it, it's like we're sort of telling the universe that it's not really that important. It's not really that important. It's not important enough for me to stop and pay attention and really own that thing. Okay. So, what happens when you shift that around a little bit? What happens when you shift that around a little bit is that you actually create more. You create more opportunities for you to celebrate. And I mean, especially if there's like dancing or cake involved, right? Let's go for it. Let's have some fun here, people. So we create more opportunities to celebrate because we become more conscious of things. And the side benefit, which is really yummy, is that we sort of foster this environment where other people will also begin to recognize and celebrate themselves. Can you feel that for just a moment? Is there a person that you love in your life that you wouldn't want to enjoy, that you wouldn't want for them to recognize? And that's just the side benefit. That's just the side benefit. So what can we create by actually stopping and acknowledging ourselves, acknowledging our progress? And I'm going to get into sort of some of my story as we go through this. You may have heard parts of it, but I'm going to talk about how important that was for me. So one of the other pieces here is that there seems to be this collective idea that we should acknowledge ourselves when other people tell us that we are deserving of acknowledgement, right? So think about this, sort of how it plays out in society. We celebrate children's progress as they go through school, right? You move on to the next level, yay you, and get on with things, right? And you get acknowledgement at work when you get a promotion, or when you achieve a certain level of whatever it is. It could be sales, it could be hours, it could be any number of different things, right? And that is when we deem it important to celebrate, right? That's sort of the natural flow of things. But here's the thing, and I'm going to keep beating this drum because it's really important. It's really important for us to understand this. When we attach our worthiness or our deservingness, or whatever words work for you when you say that, when we attach that to someone else's opinion of us, we are setting ourselves up for failure. We are setting ourselves up for failure because what we are doing is we are allowing our own worth, our own value to be established based on the whims, the moods, the opinions of somebody else. What happens if they have a bad day? What happens if they have a bad year? Have you ever been there? You've been in a relationship with somebody, and like work, friendship, anything, right? You've been in a relationship with somebody and you're like, wow, like you must be going through a hard time right now because whatever it is. So that same person outside of those circumstances might be celebrating you like crazy. And again, if we've attached our value and our worth to their opinion, what happens when they're having a bad day or a bad month or a bad year, or they lose someone that's important to them and they're sort of floundering, or any number of other circumstances, right? What happens? Then all of a sudden, we're not getting that praise. We're not getting that acknowledgement. And how does that affect us? If you are dependent on that person to provide that acknowledgement, what happens? It's a losing battle. It's a losing game to play. So what if we just decided today? I don't know. What do you think? What if we just decided today that we are the ones who get to decide our own value? Then it's not up to anybody else, is it? Right. Right. So we're going to get more into this in the next segment of the show. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott, and today we are talking about remembering how far you have come and celebrating your own progress in your life, the sacrifices that you have made to get to this point in your life. So we're going to head to our first break now. And when we come back, we're going to talk about more about this. So stick with us for just a moment. We'll be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you are not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack to support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn how she did that, and how you can too, go to jackiemott.com. Follow her on social media, and join Jackie on Time to Rise and Thrive, Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 Central Standard Time, 11 Mountain Standard Time, and 10 Pacific Standard Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
When Jackie's husband ended their 27-year relationship without warning, that conversation was her own personal ground zero. To move forward, she had to clear the rubble, learn who she truly was, and completely rebuild her life. That required her to challenge a lifetime's worth of conditioning and limiting beliefs and recreate herself from the ground up. Jackie has channeled all of that learning and wisdom and shares it to support others who want to break free from limiting beliefs and start living the life they desire and deserve. For more information, go to jackiemott.com or email Jackie directly at jackie@jackiemott.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Time to Rise and Thrive with Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join us in the chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. For more information about Jackie's programs or to download your free copy of 5 Steps to Create a Mindset Wired for Success, visit jackiemott.com or click the social media links and follow Jackie online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. Today we are talking about celebrating you in a totally different way. Remember how far you've come. Remember how far you've come. So what would it take for you to actually just sit and be with that energy? We're going to talk about that. So I always do this. Grab a pen and paper before we hit our next segment, because we are actually going to dig into the sort of the practical. How do you do this? How do you do this? Because I have people ask me that all the time. Okay, Jackie, that's great. Like, great advice. And how do I do it? And I know that world because I lived there for a very, very, very long time. So we've got some practical tips that I will share with you in the next segment. But right now, let's just sort of pull this thing apart a little bit. So let's get real about this whole idea of comparison. Comparison, it is such a losing game. And here's why. There is not another person who has had your experiences. There's not another person on this planet who was born with your exact gifts, your exact challenges, and exactly the same proportion. There is not another human being on this planet who has lived your life. Okay. So when we start to get into this idea of comparison, and I was really thinking about like scientific stuff. I don't know why this morning when I was preparing, I was thinking about this idea of like scientific thing and how we might have two things that we were measuring, right? We're measuring these things using the same scales. Okay. Could be any kind of scale, could be like a measuring tape. It could be a weight. It could be anything. It is really important when you're doing something like that for you to be comparing exactly the same things, isn't it? Right. So if you were to compare 5 ounces of orange with 5 ounces of chocolate cake, it's a completely different thing, isn't it? How can you possibly get some sort of impartial comparison or any kind of scale that makes sense when you're dealing with an orange and a chocolate cake? It doesn't work. Okay. It might be the same weight, but it's a completely different thing. So everybody on this planet has their own path, don't they? We all have our own path. We all have had our own experiences. We all have our own subliminal soundtrack that tells us what is good and what is bad and what is okay and where should we go and what are we entitled to. I hate entitled, by the way, but what are we deserving of in this world, right? We all have our own subliminal soundtrack that tells us all of those things. There is not every person, or there is not another person who has faced exactly the same challenges. There's not another person on this planet who has done those at exactly the same time that you have, or had exactly the same outside influences or factors in their lives. There's no way for us to compare reasonably. Okay. So one of the things that's come up for me is I had this job working in this place, and this was the first place that I got fired from. It was the first place that I got fired from. So I didn't know that the manager that we had, the manager who had hired me, was moving on to a different position, and he was leaving our office. And the person that they were bringing into his spot was somebody that I didn't have a very good relationship with. He really didn't like me very much, and the feeling was kind of mutual, so that was okay. What I didn't know was happening was this. There was another person who had come in right around the same time. She was a temp. I was not. Um, I had been brought in to replace somebody, and she was covering a maternity leave. And there were different divisions within this organization. So my division was dealing with small companies, right? So like your people that do like car repairs and paint shops and all kinds of different places like that. But the small businesses, mom and pop type places or sole proprietors or things like that. Her division, she was dealing with massive corporations, okay? Massive corporations with, usually a whole lot different funding and different processes and so on and so forth. So what I didn't know was happening was I came into work one day and my manager instructed me to start to make phone calls to collect on bills that were outstanding. Now, also important to say that was not part of my job description. That was not something I was ever supposed to have to deal with, but he asked me to do it. So I did. So I started calling these people. It was also the middle of summer, which meant that a lot of my people were on vacation with their families, and it was hard to get a hold of them. If I'd been calling, in the middle of winter, it probably would have been much easier to reach these people. So at any rate, the comparison was this. They had, and by the way, the other girl's name was Jackie too. Crazy. So they had Jackie doing the same thing with her accounts. Well, her accounts were massive in comparison. I might have somebody that owed $500 and hers would be, say, $10,000, right? So I'm calling around, not knowing what was going on. And I was having really good success. I was collecting on a lot of these accounts, but very clearly the dollar figure that I could collect on was completely different than the other Jackie. She could make one call to one company and collect thousands of dollars, and it might take me 20 calls to 20 different organizations in order to achieve that one thing, that same thing, right? So we were comparing apples and oranges. There was no way to compare the success or the work that was going in on either side, but that was what they used as their scale. So I ended up losing my job and Jackie ended up staying on permanently. So this is where it's really important for us to understand this thing. Okay, you have to be comparing the same exact things, and you can't do that when you're dealing with people, because everybody is different. Everybody has had different experiences, different lessons they've learned, so on and so on and so on and so on. So I want to share with you one of the most pivotal conversations that I have ever had in my life was with my grandmother. And it was not very long before she passed away. I'm so grateful that we got to have this visit. I drove to her place. She was in one of those like retirement facility places, the really fancy ones with the fountains and all of that kind of stuff. And I drove down to see her the one day, and we had just the most lovely visit. While we were having lunch, Grandma stopped. Now, I don't know, maybe, they say that sometimes people know that their time is coming, and maybe that's what happened that day. And she sort of stopped in her meal and she looked at me and she said, Jackie, I want you to know how proud I am of you. I want you to know how proud. And I just looked at her because my yardstick at that point was not based on myself yet. Okay. I was looking outside of myself at the accomplishments of other people and how far other people had come in their lives and what they'd accomplished and so on and so forth. And in this particular instance, I mean, we're talking about my family members, my siblings, right? So my siblings are at the youngest 6+ years older than me and 8+ years older than me. Okay. So almost 7 and almost 9 years older than me. So you can right there see that there's an error in my logic, right? What those folks had accomplished, they were 6 and 8 years ahead of me in their growth and their development, their life experience, so on and so on and so on. Add to that I'd become a single teen mom. So when I was 17, I became a mom. They had not. So even just those circumstances, I had dealt with a completely different set of challenges and experiences at a much younger age. It is ludicrous to me now that I would have thought in any way that that was a reasonable comparison. But that was what happened when I spoke with my grandma. It's very important for us to listen sometimes to the wisdom that other people are presenting, because she said to me, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, oh, but Grandma, I haven't done this and I haven't done this. And, I haven't gone that, all of these things. And she said, oh, but Jackie, look at what you've accomplished. Look at what you've accomplished. You became a mom when you were 17 and this and this and this and this. Do you see what I'm saying? So sometimes it's hard for us to get out of that space, but I really want you to hear me. It is so very important for you to create your own yardstick. The only person that it's fair for you to compete with is you. So when you can compare yourself to prior versions of you or to where you started, which is a really great place. It really is a great place. So let's tear apart this single teen mom. 17 years old. I've got a kid. I'm on welfare. That's the only way that I'm paying my bills. It's the only way that I'm feeding. And by the way, I remember very clearly that my welfare check was about $600 a month. And my rent on my first apartment was $401. So $199 to stretch out to feed, diaper, clothe an infant and feed myself and have my phone and everything else, right? So you can imagine now at this phase of my life, I just turned 51 on Tuesday. I'm loving this time of my life, by the way. And I think, and I go, wow, what I did, where I came from, I got an education. I was able to create a business and, create some success and some financial comfort in my life, not to mention so many other accomplishments, right? Not to mention. So when we compare ourselves to anybody, it needs to be with prior versions of ourselves, because that is the only place that we're not looking at oranges and chocolate cake. Okay. It's the only place. You know what you've done well. And today I'm asking you to own that. I'm asking you to really roll around in that and allow yourself to celebrate how far you've come. How far have you come? So on that note, I'm going to head us into our next break. Don't forget to grab that pen and paper if you haven't already. And again, if you are not in a position where you can take notes right now, go and find us on any of the on-demand podcast channels. We're all over the place. Just do a search of Jackie Mott or of Time to Rise and Thrive on Google, and you'll see us all over the place. It's kind of freaky. All right. So on that note, we are going to head to our next break. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. Today, we are talking about remember. How far have you come? So stick with us for a moment. We will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you are not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack to support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn how she did that, and how you can too, go to jackiemott.com. Follow her on social media, and join Jackie on Time to Rise and Thrive, Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 Central Standard Time, 11 Mountain Standard Time, and 10 Pacific Standard Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Time to Rise and Thrive with Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join us in the chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information about Jackie's programs or to download your free copy of 5 Steps to Create a Mindset Wired for Success, visit JackieMott.com or click the social media links and follow Jackie online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. Today we are talking about remember. How far have you come? Let's take a moment to just celebrate that. And speaking of which, I can't even reach it. Just give me a second. I'm going to reach it. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about this because this is my book. Can you see it? Believe all things are possible. So we're going to celebrate that. What have you accomplished? How far have you come? I was that girl. I was that girl, that 17-year-old mother. I was that girl who then became a person who has a show, who wrote a book, do you see what I'm saying? How far have you come? And what would it take for you to acknowledge those things? What would it take, and what could you create more for yourself if you did? Again, when we talk about these things, when we acknowledge what we have to be grateful for, when we acknowledge what it took for us to accomplish anything, oh my goodness, look what Kim says: author, media personality, speaker, coach, Hollywood smiler. Oh my goodness. Hollywood smiler. Isn't that awesome? I do have a bit of $1 million smile, don't I? So this is the thing. When we take time to acknowledge those things, what more could open up for us? What would you like to open up for you? And what if the only thing that you really needed to do was shift some of those messages and shift that energy so that you are in that celebration mode? Like I said, I mean, dancing and cake, count me in. Who doesn't like that stuff? So let's just do that today. What do you think? It's Friday. How would it feel going into the weekend with that attitude of, wow, look at me. Look at how far I've come. Look what I've done. Right? Yeah. So I just want to share with you really quickly before we get into that practical stuff. There is so much exciting, because that's one thing. That book is one thing, right? But there's all of these programs and all of these things that are happening as a result of that. So there's going to be a book launch on December 5th, which is perfect because that was actually born in December last year when I was thinking about Christmas. And there's a Believe All Things Are Possible program that I've set up. There is a 90-day boot camp that I've set up. So all of these fantastic, exciting things are happening in my business. I'm going to let you know that you can go to jackiemott.com to find more information about just about everything that we're doing, and also to grab your copy of my e-guide or ebook or whatever it's called, 5 Steps to Create a Mindset Wired for Success. It is completely free of charge. It will help you walk through the steps of shifting around some of those messages. I give you all the good stuff in the book. And if you need support, then find me. I'm here every Friday afternoon. You can email me at jackie@jackiemott.com. You can also find me on social media all over the place. So just find me, join me, come back on Friday afternoons, sign up for the stuff on Facebook, all of that, whatever. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. What if we could start 2023 in a whole new way? What do you think? Might that be fun? What would you like to create in 2023? Let's get a jump start. All right. So I promised you some practical steps. Are you ready? Here we go. So the first thing, and we've already been doing this a little bit on the show, but the first thing, acknowledge, where did you start? So again, in the story, in the example that we're talking about, I started out a 17-year-old mom, single mom on welfare, right? That was my starting point. I had no education. I had no job. I had no money. I had really a whole lot of responsibility and a whole lot of not much to support me in doing that. Now, I was blessed. I had some great people in my life who helped me get through that. And I want to acknowledge that. And I started off there. So that bar is already kind of pretty low, right? Yeah. So now, what factors have you triumphed over? Second step. What have you accomplished? So, okay, I got an education, right? I created a successful career. I went back to school and I became, well, the successful career wasn't at that job that I told you about, was it? But that caused me to go back to school. And when I went back to school, then I got into the accounting education stuff. And then I created an accounting business out of that. Do you see what I'm saying? So that led to, and this led to, and so on and so forth. And so what have you accomplished? Where did you come from? Number one. And number two, what have you triumphed on? What circumstances did you triumph over? Okay. What have you created for yourself so far? Now, this one might be a little bit, but we're going to look at it anyway. It's the evaluation. Have you done the best you could? Have you done the best that you could? And again, we're not going to get into the like beat myself over the head because I didn't. We're going to get into have you done the best you could, only because we're going to use that as our evaluation tool, right? Are there things that you could have done differently? Are there factors that came into play? I promise you, when we lost my sister a few years ago, it was such a shock to my system that there was a period of time where I could barely function. Did I do the best I could at that time? Probably not. Not the best I could, but the best I could under those circumstances, yes. So have some kindness for yourself, especially for those circumstances that have come up in your life that were completely outside of your control. Okay. So have you done the best you could? And if you haven't, what could you have done differently? Okay. What could you have done differently? And then you can start to look at, well, what people could I've brought in that might have been able to mentor me or support me or help me understand things in a different way? What programs or courses or schooling or whatever could I pursue that I haven't yet looked into? Do you see what I'm saying? So this is an evaluation tool on, have I done the best I could? Okay, under the circumstances, yes, but what could I have done? Oh, now here it gets really yummy and juicy. Are you ready? What could I do now if I incorporated some of those other factors? What if I went back to school? What if I took a course? What if I enrolled in, some sort of activity that just might bring more fun and joy into my life? What would I like to create? And what could I do to make that even more successful? What do you think? Yummy and juicy. So I'm going to tell you, I'm doing improv classes. I just started doing them like a couple of weeks ago. We've had 2 so far, and I am having so much fun. And that alone has shifted a lot of stuff in my world. Just the so much fun, that laughter, that joy, that playfulness. Now, not everybody is going to be, I understand that's a Jackie thing. That's a Jackie thing. Not everybody's going to appreciate that. For me, this is something that is very important. The laughter and the joy and the play for me are very important. And they've been kind of lacking the last few years. So this was a very purposeful thing. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to take a course. I don't know what kind of course. Maybe I'll enroll in a dance class. Maybe oh, look, there's improv classes. That might be fun. And that was what I chose. Do you see what I'm saying? So what could you bring into your world that might support you or help you to reach the goals that you would like to reach? Very important thing to ask yourself. All right. That also, actually, backing it up just for 1 second, using your own yardstick. Okay. So you're competing only with yourself. You're comparing only with yourself, your own yardstick. What have you done well? What could you do differently? Right? Based on you, based on your factors, your gifts, your challenges, all of that kind of stuff. Because, okay, so I'm not gonna, break my arm patting myself on the back, but 17 years old, I became a mom. I was on welfare with no education, no money, nothing, right? Living in a crappy apartment that cost me more than half of the money that I had coming in to feed, clothe, shelter, so on and so forth to people. There are people who never make it out of that. There are people who never make it out of that. And I say that with love and compassion. And I could have been one of them. Do you understand? So I acknowledge that took a lot to break free of and to move forward and create a completely different type of life. I will acknowledge that. I will own that because I'm proud of myself for doing that. Do you understand? So own whatever it is that you've accomplished. Own it, celebrate it. Go ahead and beat yourself on the back. If that makes you feel good, go ahead and do it. Find the people who will celebrate you. And this is one thing that I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to bring up, but I was on the phone with one of my closest friends this morning. Now, interesting, because she and I started this journey together. We are very near in age. I think she's about 6 months older than me, something like that. And we had children within months of each other. So we met at school in this program that was actually for teen moms and so on and so forth. And we've been together for a long time. Now, she said to me just this morning, we were having a conversation where we're talking about a whole bunch of factors and things that are going on. And she is, of course, one of my biggest fans, and I am one of hers. And she said to me this morning, I really just need you to stop for a second, because I need you to acknowledge, Jackie, with everything that's been going on in your life, you have done this thing. You managed to hold on to your house, going through a divorce, with the financial circumstances and the challenges and the debt and all of the stuff that happens very often when we are going through those sorts of circumstances. And she said, I need you to celebrate that. You have held on to your house, right? So sometimes the things, because I wasn't even in that space. But when she said that to me, I was like, wow, she's right. So find those people who celebrate you. Find those people that will remind you of holy, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you because I watched what it took. And I'm tearing up right now. I watched what it took for you to do what you did. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud. I love you so much because I see what you've done. Do you understand? And I want you to hear this coming from my heart. Whatever you have accomplished, whatever you have come from, whatever you have triumphed over, I'm proud of you. I am proud of you. And my only hope for today's show is that you leave this show proud of yourself too, and able to acknowledge who you are and what it took for you to get to where you are. Okay. Now I'm gonna take us to a break so I can get a hold of myself here. So you're with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. And I'm so grateful for you being with me today. I'm so grateful for the space that we are holding for each other right now. So stick with us for just a moment. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this conversation about remembering how far you've come. We'll be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack to support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn how she did that, and how you can too, go to jackiemott.com. Follow her on social media, and join Jackie on Time to Rise and Thrive, Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 Central Standard Time, 11 Mountain Standard Time, and 10 Pacific Standard Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
When Jackie's husband ended their 27-year relationship without warning, that conversation was her own personal ground zero. To move forward, she had to clear the rubble, learn who she truly was, and completely rebuild her life. That required her to challenge a lifetime's worth of conditioning and limiting beliefs and recreate herself from the ground up. Jackie has channeled all of that learning and wisdom and shares it to support others who want to break free from limiting beliefs and start living the life they desire and deserve. For more information, go to jackiemott.com or email Jackie directly at jackie@jackiemott.com.
This is Time to Rise and Thrive with Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join us in the chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information about Jackie's programs or to download your free copy of 5 Steps to Create a Mindset Wired for Success, visit jackiemott.com or click the social media links and follow Jackie online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. Today we are talking about remembering on Remembrance Day. Remember how far you have come. What has it taken for you to get from wherever you started to where you are right now? And what can you celebrate for yourself? What can you acknowledge for yourself? What would you like to celebrate? So I will tell you this. I would love to hear your story. I would love to hear the thing that breaks open for you today, just like I had my moment that broke open for me. I would love to hear that. Please, if you feel so inclined, send me an email, jackie@jackiemott.com. You can find me on Facebook at Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. And on other social media. I don't really understand that stuff terribly well. So YouTube, I've actually been really working on that channel as well. So you can find me all over the place. Just send me a message. If there's something that today you're like, wow, I've accomplished something really important, I would love it if you would share that with me. So I'd love to hear from you. So here's the thing, okay? I am so very blessed to have had that conversation with my grandmother all those years ago. And that's probably 20 years ago. And it took time after that. It took time for that to filter through. It took time for me to really start to understand how correct she was in what she said, how deserving of her being proud of me I really was. It took time for that. So one of the things that I talked about is finding those people that can help you. Come and join me on the show on Friday afternoons. We're here every Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we are always talking about stuff like this. You can find my book when it comes out, Believe All Things Are Possible. You can find me on social media. There are all kinds of things that I do all the time that, there are master classes and things like that I ask people to sign up for. It is a great way for us to connect and, join each other on our journey. Join each other on the journey, because these people that I have in my life are the ones that help reflect back at me, and also the people that I can celebrate. And life is so much better when you can add that flavor, when we can talk about, wow, look at what you've accomplished, right? It's a whole different thing. So I'm very, very blessed to have those people in my life. And I really love being that person for the people that I work with and friends and so on and so forth. I really do. That conversation with my grandmother helped me to start to see things differently. It helped me to start to see myself differently. And that was what I think helped me to get going on that whole journey of, like, really, okay, what am I? I'm using someone else's yardstick, right? How can I evaluate myself fairly using someone else's yardstick, right? Yeah. So what kind of yardstick makes sense for you? What kind of yardstick makes sense for you? Again, please take time, whether you contact me or not. And I really would love to hear your stories, but please take some time this weekend to just give yourself that, like, wow, I accomplished that thing. Oh my God. Maybe you're the best mom in the world. Maybe you're, the best, I don't know. Maybe you make the best turkey dinner. I don't know. I don't know what your gifts are. I'd love to hear them. So what is that thing for you? What is that thing that maybe you ran up against some circumstance that caused you so much, like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know where I'm going anymore. And you overcame it. What have you lived? Tell me your story. Tell me your story. I want to hear it. And on that note, we are running right up against the wire here. So what I want to share with you is, this was another influential thing that really changed things for me. It's a quote by Marianne Williamson. You can find it all over the place. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson. That is one of those things that, really, I love that one. I love that one. So on that note, my friends, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your contribution to me. This is my favorite time of the week because I get to come on here and, think about things and present these ideas. I just absolutely love it. So next week, we will be back at 1 p.m. Eastern. It is called Forgive Should You Forget? Ooh. We're going to be talking about why forgiveness is essential in order for us to move forward in our lives, and also whether forgetting is necessary or even helpful. Right? Yeah, it's one of those things that we've all got that, like, forgive and forget, right? Turn the other cheek. There's so much stuff that tells us that that is the way to go, but maybe it's not. So if that speaks to you, I'd love to see you back here on Friday afternoon next week. So again, you are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. You can find me at jackiemott.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me everywhere. So just Google Jackie Mott, you'll find me. Thanks again so much for being with me on today's episode of Time to Rise and Thrive. And don't forget, until next week, it is your time to rise and thrive.
Thank you for joining Time to Rise and Thrive. Jackie Mott returns next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 Central Standard Time, 11 Mountain Standard Time, and 10 Pacific Standard Time. Remember, you can find recordings of previous shows on all of your favorite on-demand channels. You can also find Jackie at jackiemott.com and follow her on social media. We hope you'll join us next Friday. Have a fantastic week, and remember, it's your time to rise and thrive.